A while ago, I made a video called "You Are Not the Voice in Your Head." From the moment we learn to think, we can't stop. We become so lost in thought that we even start to believe that we are our thoughts. You are conditioned to identify with the voice in your head, which never stops talking from the moment you wake up to when you fall asleep. But that voice in your head isn't you, and whatever it says has nothing to do with you. Now, since it's true that you aren't the voice in your head, this also then means that you are not a person. The person is an illusion. It's basically a combination of the different attitudes the voice in your head expresses, and also your social and general psychological conditioning. So philosophically / spiritually speaking, the person is not real. And to legally speaking, the person is a legal fiction.
Ah, the government. It loves you and wants to keep you safe and well. It even wants to make paying taxes, fines, and court costs easier for you. How? Well, you'll need to meet your straw man. He was born the same day you were. He looks like you, has the same name, and lives in your house, but you never knew he existed. You will have even paid his parking tickets or taxes. The worst part? He's been dead from day one. From every birth certificate, a legal personality, or legal fiction, is created with the same name to confuse little old you into thinking it's you. So, there is a human you and a paper you, or as it's commonly known, a straw man.
So both spiritually and in relation to the world we actually live in, the person is not real. So if you don't identify as a person, nobody can have any authority over you. Not a cop, not a judge, nobody.
When you get a bill, it's sent to you but belongs to your straw man, not you. That's why bills, fines, and summons start with Mr., Mrs., or Ms. Sometimes you'll see your surname in capitals, just like on a gravestone. That's because your straw man is dead and just a silly piece of paper, created before you could comprehend or even consent to it.
So with that power, that authority, you are totally in control of what you do. And that's what made the big difference to me. When I thought they can't do it, they've just got threats and fear and everything else. I'm my own authority. Nobody can tell me what to do. I'm not subject to the laws, the legislation, the acts and statutes, because I'm not a citizen. I'm not an occupier. I'm not a resident. I'm me. I'm not this.
Yep.
This is a piece of paper. And people can't get that because this piece of paper in theory says my name. So people associate, oh, that's me. That's not me. I'm not a piece of paper. So they can have authority over this if I admit to being this,
Yep.
but I'm not admitting to being this. So consequently, they can't have any power over me at all.
Okay, there's two levels of waking up, by the way. One level of waking up is understanding what the government is trying to do. The next level of waking up is realizing the government doesn't even exist. Now, when you get into that zone, that's when you'll start to wake up and you will not live in fear anymore, because you'll realize that the government is a legal fiction. When you get rid of that legal fiction, all you have is people, and now you know who is behind all of this. You pull back the curtain. It's like the last scene of The Wizard of Oz, right? I don't care about the booming voice and the hologram and the flames. Not interested. That's the government. That's the legal fiction. Offer declined. I pull back the curtain and go, who's pulling the levers?
When you go to court, you represent your straw man. So you, the human, take on any costs, fees, taxes, and fines involved for the straw man. The human you doesn't even need to pay them. But you made a contract with the court by appearing on behalf of your legal personality or straw man, just like the government knew you would. Confused? Well, don't worry. The government doesn't want you to know anyway. If you knew, you'd stop paying things like council tax and parking tickets. Because when you go to court, you are representing your straw man. You are you, alive and made of flesh and blood. Your straw man or legal personality is a piece of paper created from your birth certificate. And you think it's you. What a silly Billy.
we can see that if we fight the system, we're fighting it as the false self they created for us, right? So the real way to overthrow the system is to transcend it, to just say, oh, I'm not that person you made up. I'm a man named Aaron Scott of the House of Abkey, or however you want to present yourself. And so none of your laws apply to me. I don't think we have a business contract, do we? All your business contracts are with the false self. And that's exactly what I teach in terms of transcending ego, is you have to know who you are as the Christ, the eternal spirit, the presence indwelling in the body, not the body itself. The body is like the legal fiction for the ego.
Yeah.
If it makes you think you're the body, then you did all those bad things in the past. You're guilty for those past things because the body did it and you're the body.
This also applies to the inner world, because unless you identify as the ego, the person, then the mind can't have any power over you. Now, in terms of the external world, think about it like this. Who in the world has any authority over you? Is it the police? Your mom? Your wife? Or somebody you think can take away your freedom? Well, if so, then can you honestly say that you're free? Of course not. As long as another human being has power over you, then you are no different than a slave. And the only way to be free, both in the world and psychologically, is to realize that you are not a person.
By the way, governments are corporations, if people don't know that.
The legal system cannot deal with humans. It can only deal with pieces of paper. Only common law can deal with humans. So at your birth, they created a piece of paper with your name on it, in capitals, just like any other corporation. This is done to dupe you later in life into thinking that you are the legal entity and not you. Then imaginary penalties and cost are imposed on the straw man, and you, thinking you are it, pay them.
And it's kind of like an overcoat, this legal fiction. You know, as soon as you put it on, as soon as they invite you to put this overcoat on, and you do so, now they can grab hold of the overcoat and throw it in jail with you in it. But until you put that overcoat on, they can't do anything to you because you are not that name. You know, you think you are, you know, you're taught you are, but you're not.
The deception is done through the manipulation of words and language.
There are two types of law. One's called common law and one's called statute law, and they're not the same. Statute law is the law of contracts. It has to contract between consenting corporations. And this is why every government, government agency, council department, the houses of parliament, the police, the courts, and so on, are all private corporations. They don't want us to know that, but they are. You can prove it. They're private corporations, and they have to be, because statute law, which is coming out of governments in legislation and regulations and all this stuff, that is the law, like I say, of contracts between contracting corporations. And so they have to make all these things like the police, etc., corporations, for statute law to operate. And so how do they contract with people? Well, they turn people into corporations, and you think the corporation is you. So when these various institutions that are all private corporations try to impact upon your life, you think that they can, because the corporate entity which they're actually interacting with is you, the living, breathing man or woman, and it's not. You can't control the fine detail of people's lives with common law. So they've created the statute law so that they can introduce legislation, rules and regulations over every aspect of your life. But it's not your life. It's a fictitious corporation. They claim is you. It's utter fraud on an extraordinary scale. So, the police cannot have jurisdiction over you, the living, breathing man and woman, unless you contract with them. And there's various tricks that they use to make you contract, even though you don't realize you are, which is fraud in itself. But if you don't contract with them, they have no jurisdiction over you. And all this COVID law and all this other statute law, it's not applicable under common law to living, breathing men and women. So the courts are not independent organizations that administer justice to the people. No, it's a private corporation. And it's so well hidden that, great numbers of judges don't even know that. And so you have this statute law. And I mean, everything comes out of government, all these COVID laws, all of it, masks, well, the lot, that are corporate law needing contracts to apply. So they turned governments and agencies and all these things into corporations, private corporate entities. Houses of Parliament in Britain, corporate entity, because they have to have corporation to contract with the people, so that the law of the statute law applies to the people. So how have they done that? Well, this is where the level of deceit is extraordinary. You are born a living, breathing child who develops into a living, breathing man or woman. Okay, well, that's bloody obvious, isn't it? Oh, but a living, breathing man or woman is not a corporate entity. Therefore, statute law coming out of governments and its institutions cannot apply to a living, breathing man or woman, because it's not a corporate entity. So there's no contractual basis. So this is what they do. When you take out a birth certificate on your child, the government creates a fictitious corporate entity in your child's name, and it goes on for life, with little tricks. So, okay, my name is David Vaughan Icke. That is the name given to the living, breathing man. They create these fictitious corporate entities in our name by putting Mr., Mrs. in front of them. So my fictitious corporate entity will be called Mr. David Vaughan Icke. They also use the trick of putting the corporate entity overwhelmingly, so often, in all capital letters. You'll get official documents and stuff from various sources, and your name will be in all capital letters. And they designate the corporate fictitious entity a person. So to disconnect from that, absolutely don't describe yourself as a person, because if you acknowledge you're a person, you acknowledge that you are this fictitious corporate entity.
We are in the land of forgetfulness. We have forgotten our true nature, and 24/7 we're being encouraged to forget.
Life is a movie and the world is a stage, which is full of grown people never acting their age. So I'm turning the page. Is it the end or the start of a new chapter called Following My Heart? Like